In this video, I'm going to be going through the Chapter 9, Test 1, Solving Quadratic Equations extra review. So for the first problem here, it says, which function has x-intercepts -2, 0 and 7, 0? Okay, well, the x-intercepts mean that this is when x is equal to -2 and x is equal to 7. So here we're given the answers, so we're going to kind of just work backwards to get back to what the equation would have looked like before we solved it. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides to get x plus 2 equals 0. Then for this one, I'll subtract 7 from both sides to get x minus 7 equals 0. So again, we're kind of just working backwards. So here my two factors are x plus 2 and x minus 7, which would be D. For the second problem, it says, what are the zeros of the following function? So here I'm going to have x squared plus 5x minus 24 equals 0. I'm replacing this f of x with 0. And then I'm going to solve that. I'm going to try factoring first to see if it's factorable. So a times c on top, b on the bottom. This is a, b, c. So a times c would be 1 times -24, which is -24. B would be positive 5. The two numbers that multiply to be -24 and add to be positive 5 would be 8 and -3. Okay, but it says to find the zeros, which means find the solutions. Okay, so we're not just going to say 8 and -3. We're going to actually solve this. So x plus 8 and x minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to take each factor and set them both equal to 0. So x plus 8 equals 0. And x minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to solve both of those. So I get -8 and 3, which would be A. The next problem is a real world problem. So it says you have 232 square feet of fabric to make a circular play parachute for kids. What is the radius of the largest parachute you could make? And then round to the nearest 1/10 of a foot. Okay, so we know that we have 232 square feet. So square feet means that we have the area. So I have 232 square feet of fabric. And I'm trying to find what is the radius of the largest circle that we could make. So I'm trying to isolate the r squared. So to do that, I'm going to divide both sides by pi. So in your calculator, you can use the pi button or 3.14. And when I divide that, I get 73.89. This is a quadratic. It's actually going to be solved with square root method because I have a constant equals r squared. So to solve this, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of 73.89 would be positive or negative 8.6, okay, which is positive 8.6 and negative 8.6. But since we're talking about radius, the negative 8.6 doesn't make sense because radius means distance, and distance can't be negative. So we would just leave the positive 8.6 as our final answer. So the largest radius we could make would be 8.6 feet. Okay, the next problem says solve using any method. So for the first one here, I'm going to think through my flow chart. First thing I notice is that it's set equal to 0, so that's a good start. Second, I'm going to see if I can factor it because I think factoring is the easier method to use here. So I like to factor if I can. So a times c on top would be 1 times 12, which is 12. B would be -8. The two numbers that multiply to be 12 and add to be -8 would be -6 and -2. So it does factor x minus 6 and x minus 2. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. I solve both of those equations and I get 6 and 2. Okay, so which method did I use? I used factoring method, and because it was easily factorable. That's why I did it. Okay, the next problem. First thing I noticed is that it's set equal to 0, so that's a good start. And like I was saying in the other video, if you watch the other video I made, anytime I have a trinomial here on the left side, so 3 terms, and a is not equal to 1, I do quadratic formula. So that's what I would recommend here. Okay, there may be another way to solve it, but I'm going to go ahead and just go straight into quadratic formula because I have a trinomial and a is not equal to 1. So a is 4, b is 8, and c is -1. I'm going to find the discriminant first, which is b squared minus 4ac. Okay. Remember, your quadratic formula is this whole thing here. Okay, so I'm going to find the discriminant, which is this part right here, first. So b squared would be 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is -1. 8 squared would be 64. -4 times 4 would be -16, times -1 would be +16. So this is 80. That tells me I'm going to have 2 solutions. So x equals -b, so -8, plus or minus the square root of 80, all over 2a, which is 4. So x is equal to -8 plus or minus the square root of 80 is 8.94, all over 8. So I have 2 equations here, -8 plus 8.94 divided by 8, and -8 minus 8.94 divided by 8. You can just solve those by typing them in your calculator, and you should get 0.12 and -2.12. Which method did I use? I used quadratic formula because it doesn't factor easily, or if at all. Okay, I typically don't use factoring method unless I can just do big X. Doesn't factor easily, bx is not missing. So you wouldn't be able to do square root method either. Okay, for the last problem on that page, it's set equal to 0, so that's a good start. I'm going to see if I can factor this. It looks like it has a GCF of 5x. 5 goes into both of them, x goes into both of them. So I'm going to go ahead and factor that out. If I do so, 25x squared divided by 5x is 5x. -35x divided by 5x is -7. This actually factored for us, so I'm going to go ahead and do factoring method. So I'm going to set both of the factors equal to 0. And then I'm going to solve both of those. So add 7 to both sides, divide both sides by 5, and I get 7/5 and 0.